me. The first thing I see when we look at Ephesians chapter 1, I'm going to give you three. The first one I see, and we got to celebrate, is the gift. Yeah. But that goes back a little bit further than what we've been looking at. In verse 1, chapter 4, it says, I therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you to walk worthy of the calling with which you have been called. Pastor tells you all the time, he ain't the only one in here that's been called. Yeah, that's a mistake for any pastor to make. Did you get that? Paul writes to these called out folk in Ephesus, and he reminds them who they really are. He says, in view of who you are, you ought to live like it. Yeah. He says, in view of who you ought to walk worthy of the calling wherewith you have been called. Somebody say that's vision. Yeah. Because you can't walk in your calling if you don't have vision. I need some praying people, somebody that know how to say amen. You can't walk in a vision that you can't see. See, to have vision, you have to be able to know your callings, of which God had told him. Listen, he rose early in the morning. In other words, it became a priority for him. He didn't put nothing else in front of it. He didn't put it down at the end of the day. He put it at the front of the day. I'm talking to somebody. He didn't have conversations with everybody else first and then conversations with God. You know that's backwards, right? For after you've already lived out your day, the course of your day, and you've had conversations and interactions with everybody else, what sense does it make to involve God in after all of that? When you should take God and involve him in the first part. Come on, somebody. And then all your interactions and communications and connections with everybody else, just maybe they might flow a little bit differently. Abraham was a person of prioritization. God gave him what to do. He made it a priority. He rose early in the morning. And not only that, look at the place he went. The text says he went to the place of which God had told him. I know that's not most of us, because we would have went everywhere else but the place that God told us to go. How often do we give God substitutes? Well, God, I ain't going to do that, but I will do this. You can't bargain with God. You can't argue with God, not win. Yeah. And often we get in a relationship with God and we want to act like we're the God and he's following us and we want him to bless our assignment instead of saying, God, I'm just going to go what you told me to go. I'll go. They sung that, didn't they? I will go in his name. Abraham went in his name. Watch this, to the place where God told him to go. God has a covenant place for a covenant people. You ought not ever be haphazard and accidental about it. You know that you know that you know where you are is where God placed you and where God planted you. And because you know that you know that you know that's where God placed you and that's where God planted you, no devil in hell will be able to move you away. Yeah. Come hell or high water, I'll be right here. That's where God placed me and that's where God planted me. Abraham, he went to the place of which God told him. He was precise. There was precision in his action before God. Are you prioritizing with God? Are you precise with God? Doing exactly what it is that he told you to do? Could you have built the boat? Could you have built the ark instead of Noah? Would you have used some other type of wood? Come on here, somebody. Would you have put some plastics off in there? Come on. Some corkscrews. What would you have thrown in? None of us would be here today if some of us had been Noah. Come on. Gopher wood. That's way over there. I got some stuff over here. Come on. Ain't nobody got time for that. I'm just going to work. How much precision do you use when it comes to what God has told you to do? Some of us, we would have taken all kind of detours, all kind of opposite directions. Some of us, we would have stayed in the bed. Some of us, when we got the call from God talking about go and offer your only son, the one you love. Now, some of us, we would have offered one of the son, but it wouldn't have been, come on. It wouldn't have been, come on, wouldn't have been the one you love. Not only did he leave the house, but he got up early and he went to the place where God told him to go. If there's going to be a covenant continuance in the work that Christ completed, there must then be a prioritization and a precision. But fifthly, when we look at verses 4 through 5, there must also be, somebody write this down, an elimination. Oh, Lord, there must also be an elimination. Look at verse 4. Then on the third day, Abraham lifted his eyes and saw the place afar off. And Abraham said to his young men, "Stay here with the donkey. The lad and I will go yonder and worship, and we will come back to you." In order to experience, in order to experience any real level of elevation, there must first be some real elimination in your life. Is that making sense for anybody? Abraham said to his young men, "Stay here with the donkey. The lad and I will go yonder to worship, and we will come back to you." I got a question for you. Who or what do you need to eliminate from your life so that you can go up to a higher ground and really worship God? Who's the people in your life that you need to tell them boldly as you know how, bravely as you can, "Stay here with the donkeys"? I'm just saying. Is it possible, covenant, that much of our worship is dependent upon what we are first willing to cut off and cut out of our lives? And whenever we don't cut off and cut out of our lives what we need to cut off and cut off, we can't go up where God is to worship. Could we go further? Who do you have in the space in your life that ought to be reserved only for inner court and holy of holy type people, and you got some folk in there that don't even do well in the outer court? And you in relationship with them. The first voice you hear in the morning, the last one you hear at night, all through the day, your dialogue, your conversation is with this person, and you're wondering why your worship is not what it ought to be. Why have you not yet told them to stay here with the donkeys? Because I'm going up to worship. Are there anybody in here who can say without a shadow of a doubt, "I don't know what you're going to do, but I'm going up"? Can't stay here anymore. Been here too long. Going up to worship. You ever wonder why when we read about stories of going to heaven, you don't hear anything about preachers and pastors and proclaimers and all that? Because when we get to heaven, we're going to see him as he is, and then we shall evermore be with him. And there ain't no need for no vision, because you're going to see God for yourself. You don't need a preacher. You don't need a pastor. You don't need a prophet. You don't need a proclaimer. We all going to be praisers up in there. But down here, somebody say down here, sure enough need a preacher. So when God calls the visionary, he so abides in God that he's able, I love this, he's able to call those things which are not as though they were. Yeah, the man of God has a mantle on life to speak to things that don't exist, that they will exist. He's able to say amen and see dead things and say resurrection, resurrection, resurrection. Could I give you the third one? Worship is about your witness for God. Did you hear me? Yes. Worship, not only is it about who or what you lift up and talk about the most, but worship is about your witness for God. For this woman went back to the city, and this text shows us that because of her testimony, because of her witness, because of the fact that she opened up her mouth and spoke boldly and courageously about what she had seen, heard, felt, and experienced when she spent time with Jesus. And I want to tell you, when you spend time with Jesus, you will see something, you will hear something, you will feel something, you will experience something that you can't get in God's presence and stay the same. This was a woman
worshiper. And as a true worshiper, she went back to her world. What happens when you go back to your world and you tell them about the worship experience that you witnessed with your own eyes, with your own heart, time that you spent with God, and you were with them early in the morning, and you say, look at here, God spoke to my heart this morning, and he told me that everything is going to be all right. Worship is your witness to the world that needs a word.
And that's why vision, I believe, is one of the most powerful gifts that God ever gives to his children. Proverbs 29:18, one of my favorites. Without a vision, Pastor, the people perish. Favorite author, Dr. Miles Monroe, he says, sight is a function of the eyes, but vision is a function of the heart. Yeah. Love Helen Keller's quotes. One of hers, most powerful to me. It says, the only thing worse than being blind is having sight and no vision. So you know what I've discovered as I study this thing over the years? I've discovered, number one, get this, God, not man, is the originator of all vision. Yeah, I say he's the originator. Yeah. God, not man, that means he's the author and he's the finisher of everything related to vision. He's the Alpha and he's Omega. He starts it and he finishes it. God, not man. From right back to the back of the New Testament, from where we are now to the New Testament, from the New Testament period all the way back to the Old Testament, from the Old Testament all the way back to the garden, God has one seamless vision, listen, that never really changes. The only thing that changes are the players on the field doing their various parts. We've been assigned the dominion of the same exact vision. I ain't got time to go through there, but I'll just tell you this. We change, but the Lord changes not. RBC, y'all in the house? Jay, how where you at? I said we change, but the Lord changes not. So right.